人生の最後に勝つ人間とは、一体どのような人間か、地位か、名誉か、あるいは巨万の富か、断じて違う。私が長年の人間観察と、幾度もの生死の境をさまよい、その果てにつかみ取った結論は、あまりにもシンプルで、しかし残酷なほどに明快だ。最後に勝つ者、それはどのような嵐が吹き荒れようとも、自らの心の炎を一瞬たりとも消さなかったものである。運命というものは、この心の炎の強さに呼応して、その姿を劇的に変えるものなのだ。今日、こうして皆さんと魂の対話ができること、これは単なる偶然ではありません。宇宙の大いなる意志が、今、あなたという人間に目覚めよと語りかけている。私はそう確信しております。さあ、背筋を伸ばし、丹田に力を込めて、私の言葉を全身全霊で受け止めてください。今日は、皆さんが心の奥底で恐れている人生の勝敗というものについて、その根底を覆すような真理の話をいたしましょう。現代の世の中を見渡すと、あまりにも多くの人々が何かに怯え、何かに追われるようにして生きています。将来への漠然とした不安、健康への懸念、人間関係の圧力、そして経済的な困窮、皆、眉間に深いシワを寄せ、下を向き、まるで重たい荷物を背負わされたダバのように、足を引きずって歩いている。そして口を開けば、勝ち組になりたい、負けたくないと、目に見える数字や他者との比較ばかりを気に病んでいる。しかし、私が断言しましょう。あなたが追い求めているその勝ち負けの基準、それ自体が間違っているのです。隣の家より大きな車に乗ることが勝利ですか？同級生より出世することが勝利ですか？老後の資金を少しばかり多く溜め込むことが勝利ですか？否、断じて否である。そのような相対的な幸福、つまり他者との比較でしか成り立たない幸福を追い求めているうちは、あなたは永遠に人生の敗者です。なぜなら、上には上がおり、時代は変わり、手に入れた金や名誉は、死ぬ時には何一つの世へは持っていけないからです。そんな儚い砂の城を築くために、尊い命の時間をすり減らすのは、あまりにも愚かではありませんか。では、真の勝者とは何か。それは、人生という壮大な舞台の幕が下りるその瞬間に、一片の悔いもなく、あ、面白かった。私の人生は最高だったと、高らかに笑って旅立てる人間のことです。そして、その境地に達するためには、たった一つの条件、たった一つの法則を守り抜けばよい。それは、最後に笑うということではなく、途中のあらゆる苦難、理不尽、悲しみさえも、すべてを自らの魂を磨くと意志として歓迎し、笑って飲み込める強靭な絶対積極の精神を持つということです。私が今日語るのは、小手先の成功法則や、浅薄な処世術ではありません。人間という生き物が、この大宇宙の中で本来持っている力を最大限に発揮し、運命を自らの手でねじ伏せ、切り開くための絶対的な法則です。まず、皆さんに問いたい。あなたは自分の人生の操縦桿をしっかりと自分で握っていますか？それとも、世間の目や他人の評価、あるいは過去の失敗といった亡霊たちに操縦席を譲り渡してはいませんか？多くの人が、あの人がこう言ったから、普通はこうだからと、他人の価値観で自分の人生を決めています。これは、自分の人生を放棄しているのと同じです。人生に勝つ人は、どんな時も自分がどうしたいか、自分がどうありたいかという心の声を羅針盤にします。たとえ世界中があなたを否定しようとも、あなた自身が自分を肯定し、信じ抜くこと、この主体性こそが、運命を切り開く最初の鍵なのです。私が長年、あまたの人間を見てきて痛感することがあります。それは、世の中には自ら不幸の種をせっせとまき、毎日水をやり、実った不幸を食べては、まずい、苦いと嘆いている人があまりにも多いということです。実に滑稽であり、同時に涙が出るほど悲しいことです。彼らは言います。景気が悪いから商売がうまくいかない。親の育て方が悪かったから、性格が歪んだ。上司が無能だから出世できない。 生まれつき体が弱いから何もできない。いいですか。耳の穴をかっぽじってよく聞きなさい。あなたの人生に起こる出来事そのものには、本来、幸も不幸もありません。そこにはただ、現象があるだけです。その現象に対して、あなたの心がどう反応し、どう意味付けをするか、それだけが、あなたの人生という現実を決定づけるのです。例えば、ここに病という一つの現象があるとしましょう。ある人は、病を得たことを嘆き、運命を呪い、なぜ私だけがこんな目にと悲劇の主人公になり、恐怖に震えながら日々を過ごします。するとどうなるか、心と体はつながっています。その消極的で暗い心の波長が、自律神経を乱し、血液を濁らせ、体の免疫機能をさらに低下させ、病はますます重篤になり、人生は暗闇へと転がり落ちていく。これこそが、自ら負けに行く姿、自滅の道です。一方で、全く同じ病を得ても、こう考える人がいます。これは、これまでの無理な生活、傲慢だった心を見直せという点からのありがたい啓示だ。休養を与えられたのだ。この機会に、自分の心と体を徹底的にいたわり、以前よりもさらに健康で、人の痛みがわかる強靭な人間に生まれ変わろう。そう決意し、病という試練に感謝すら抱く人がいるのです。すると不思議なことに、その積極的な心のエネルギーが、細胞の一つ一つを強烈に活性化させ、医学の常識を超えた回復を見せることがある。仮に病と共生することになったとしても、その人の人生は決して暗くない。周囲に希望を与え、自身も生きる喜びに満ち満ちている。どちらが人生の勝者であるか、もはや議論の余地はないでしょう。私が言いたいのは、心の態度こそが、人生を切り開く唯一にして最大の武器であるということです。ここで言う積極的とは、単に無理をして明るく振る舞うことや、から元気で強がることではありません。もっと根源的な、何があっても動じない、尊厳ある心の在り方のことです。私はこれを絶対積極と呼んでいます。他者と比べて勝った負けたと騒ぐのは相対積極に過ぎません。相手が強ければ萎縮し、弱ければおごり高ぶる。そんなものは本当の強さではない。私が説く絶対積極とは、比較対象を持たない。あなた自身の内側から湧き上がる、太陽のような輝きです。空に太陽が輝いているとき、雲があろうとなかろうと、嵐が来ようと来まいと、太陽そのものの輝きは変わりません。同じように、人生にどのような嵐が吹き荒れようとも、あなたの心という太陽を、決して曇らせてはいけないのです。心が曇れば、運命も曇る。心が輝けば、運命もまた、燦然と輝き出す。これはオカルトでも精神論でもない、厳然たる宇宙の法則なのです。この絶対積極の境地に至るには、日々の訓練が必要です。筋肉と同じで、心も鍛えなければ強くはなりません。では、具体的にどうすれば、この勝者としての心を養い、鉄壁の守りを築くことができるのでしょうか。現代の皆さんは、あまりにも多くの余計なゴミを心に背負いすぎています。朝起きてから夜寝るまで、スマートフォンという小さな箱から流れ出る、悲惨なニュース、誰かの悪口、将来への不安を煽る情報、そうした泥水を、自ら進んで心の中に流し込んでいるようなものです。これでは、いかに強靭な精神を持った人間でも、心が汚染され、本来の活力がそがれてしまうのは当たり前です。人生に勝つ人は、まずこの心の入り口を厳重に守っています。自分の心という神聖な庭に、雑草や毒草を勝手に植えさせないのです。ネガティブな言葉、批判的な思考、怒りやそねみの感情、これらはすべて、あなたの生命力を蝕む猛毒です。特にそねみという感情は恐ろしい。他人の成功をそねむとき、あなたは宇宙に対して私は成功したくありませんと宣言しているのと同じことになります。なぜなら、そねみは自分にはそれが手に入らないという敗北感の裏返しだからです。勝つ人は、他人の成功を心から祝福します。素晴らしい、次は私の番だ、と考えるのです。この心の余裕、この祝福の精神が、次の幸運を呼び込む磁石となるのです。私が強く、 強く言いたいのは、言葉の恐ろしさと、その偉大なる力についてです。皆さんは、自分の口から出る言葉を、あまりにも軽視しすぎています。疲れた。もうダメだ。死にたい。腹が立つ。あいつが憎い。こうした言葉を何気なく口にするたびに、あなたの脳と細胞は、その言葉通りの現実を作り出そうと必死に働きます。言葉は、思考の種であり、行動の設計図であり、現実を創造する魔法の杖なのです。人生に勝つ人は、どんなに苦しい状況にあっても、口から出る言葉だけは、意識的に、断固として積極的な言葉を選択します。困ったことになったと口に出しそうになったら、ぐっと飲み込んで、これは成長のチャンスだと言い換える。もう若くないと嘆くのではなく、今が人生で一番経験豊富で、知恵があると胸を張る。嘘でもいいのです。最初は形からで構わない。強気な言葉、感謝の言葉、喜びの言葉を使い続けることで、それはやがて潜在意識の深層に浸透し、あなたの人格そのものを変え、周囲の環境を変え、現実を劇的に変えていくのです。言葉を変えることは、人生を変えるための最も手っ取り早い、そして効果的な手術なのです。今日から、でも、だって、どうせという D のつく言葉を禁句にしなさい。代わりに、だからこそ、できる、大好きだという言葉を使いなさい。それだけで、見える世界の色が変わるはずです。また、人生の勝者は取り越し苦労という無駄な荷物を持ちません。皆さんの悩みの9割は、まだ起きてもいない未来への不安か、もう変えようのない過去への後悔ではありませんか。明日の天気を今から心配して、家の中で傘を差して寝るような真似をしている人があまりにも多い。雨が降ったら、その時に傘を差せばいいのです。濡れたら拭けばいい。今、この瞬間、あなたの目の前には、素晴らしい青空が広がっているかもしれないのに、心の中に黒雲を思い描いて、勝手にずぶ濡れになっている。これは生命力の浪費であり、命への冒涜です。今、この一瞬に命を燃やし尽くすこと、過去でも未来でもなく、現在という一点に全精力を注ぐこと、これこそが、充実した人生を送る唯一の秘訣です。食事をするときは、食事の味に全神経を集中して感謝する。人と話すときは、その人との出会いに感謝して誠心誠意向き合う。仕事をするときは、その仕事を通じて世の中に貢献できる喜びを感じながら没頭する。そうやって今を積み重ねた先にしか、輝かしい未来は訪れません。過去を悔やんでも1ミリも現実は変わりません。未来を憂いても1ミリも良くなりません。変えられるのは今だけです。今の心の状態が次の瞬間を作るのです。だからこそ、今、この瞬間を機嫌よく、朗らかに生きることが最強の戦略なのです。私が長年見てきた中で、本当に強い人間、最後に勝つ人間というのは、決して苦労をしなかった人ではありません。むしろ、人一倍の苦難、理不尽な逆境、深い悲しみを経験してきた人たちです。しかし、彼らはその苦難に押しつぶされなかった。押しつぶされるどころか、その苦難を踏み台にして、より高く飛躍したのです。彼らは知っているのです。夜が深ければ深いほど、夜明けは近いということ。冬が厳しければ厳しいほど、春の桜は美しく咲くということ。彼らに共通しているのは、驚くべきことに感謝の念です。順調な時に感謝するのは誰にでもできます。しかし、逆境の時、病の時、失敗の時、どん底の時、その時こそが人間の進化が問われる時なのです。この苦難のおかげで、人の痛みがわかるようになった。この失敗のおかげで、自分の至らなさを知ることができた。この貧乏のおかげで、小さな幸せのありがたみを知った。そうやって、起きた出来事の影ではなく光の側面を必死に見つけ出し、感謝できる人間。こういう人間には、もはや敵がいません。運命の女神も、こういう人間には微笑まざるを得ないのです。感謝の心は、宇宙で最も強力なプラスのエネルギーです。不平不満はマイナスのエネルギーであり、体を腐らせる毒素です。あなたが感謝の心で満たされているとき、 あなたの体の中には素晴らしい治癒力が働き、脳からは幸福を感じるホルモンがあふれ出し、表情は輝き、周囲の人々にも温かい光を与えることができます。それが巡り巡って、さらなる幸運を引き寄せる。これが引き寄せの正体であり、勝利への絶対的な方程式なのです。何か良いことがあったから感謝するのではなく、感謝するから良いことが起きるのです。この順序を間違えてはいけません。現代社会は、あまりにも頭でっかちになりすぎています。理屈、データ、効率、損得感情、そうしたもので人生を割り切ろうとする。しかし、人生とは計算通りにはいかないものです。だからこそ面白い。頭で考えすぎて、行動できなくなっている人がなんと多いことか。失敗したらどうしよう。笑われたらどうしよう。そうやって立ち止まっている間に、人生は終わってしまいます。評論家になってはいけません。観客席からヤジを飛ばすだけの人生など、つまらないものです。泥まみれになって、舞台の上で踊るのです。最後に勝つ人は、直感を信じ、勇気を持って一歩を踏み出す人です。失敗などというものは、この世に存在しません。あるのは教訓と経験だけです。転んだら、ただでは起きなければいい。何かを拾って起き上がれば、それは前進です。7回転んだら、8回起き上がればいい。その不屈の精神、諦めない心こそが、あなたの人生を黄金色に輝かせるのです。人生における本当の失敗とは、転ぶことではなく、転んだまま立ち上がろうとしないことです。立ち上がる意志がある限り、あなたは負けていないのです。あなたの中に眠っている潜在能力は、あなたが考えているよりもはるかに強大です。現代の心理学でも言われている通り、人間が普段使っている能力は、氷山の一角に過ぎません。水面下には、巨大な潜在意識の力が眠っている。この力を引き出す鍵こそが、自分はできる。自分は運がいい。自分は素晴らしい存在だ。という、揺るぎない自己肯定感です。謙虚であることは大切ですが、卑下してはいけません。あなたは、大いなる宇宙の命を分け与えられた、尊厳ある存在なのです。そのことに気づき、堂々と胸を張って生きてください。自分を安売りしてはいけません。あなたが自分を大切に扱えば、世の中もあなたを大切に扱わざるを得なくなるのです。また、最後に勝つ人は与える人です。奪おうとする人、自分の利益だけを追求する人は、一時的には富を得るかもしれませんが、最終的には孤立し、心貧しい晩年を送ることになります。愛、親切、笑顔、励ましの言葉、これらは、与えれば与えるほど、減るどころか増えていく不思議な財産です。他人の喜びを自分の喜びとし、他人の幸福を祈ることができる広大な心を持つこと、それが、巡り巡ってあなた自身を豊かにし、守ることになるのです。情けは人のためならずという言葉は、まさに真理をついています。あなたが放った善意の矢は、地球を一周して、必ずあなたの背中を押しに帰ってくるはずです。与えることは、損をすることではありません。それは、宇宙銀行への最高の貯金なのです。その利子は、あなたの想像をはるかに超えて帰ってきます。皆さん、どうか今日から、一つの習慣を変えてみてください。それは寝る前の心構えです。多くの人が、一日の終わりに、その日あった嫌なこと、失敗したこと、腹が立ったことを思い出して、布団の中で一人反省会をしています。これは、泥水を飲んで寝るようなものです。寝る前は、心の大掃除の時間です。どんなに辛い一日だったとしても、寝床に入ったら、すべてを忘れ、ただただ今日一日、命があったことに感謝するのです。ああ、今日も無事に過ごせた。ありがたい。私の体よ。今日も一日ありがとう。明日はもっと素晴らしい日になる。そう心に念じて、安らかな気持ちで眠りにつく。睡眠中は、潜在意識が最も活発に働く時間です。この時にポジティブな指令を心に送ることで、寝ている間にあなたの心と体は修復され、明日の活力が養われるのです。これこそが、人生を好転させる。誰にでもできて、最も強力な秘訣です。寝る前の数分間が、 翌日の運命を決めると言っても過言ではありません。このゴールデンタイムを決して悩みや不安で汚してはいけないのです。最後に皆さんにどうしても伝えておきたいことがあります。それは、人生は心一つの置きどころだということです。環境があなたを不幸にするのではありません。環境に対するあなたの心の置きどころがあなたを不幸にするのです。牢獄にいても鉄格子から見える星空の美しさに感動し詩を読む人がいます。豪華な宮殿に住んでいても足元の絨毯の小さなシミが気になって激怒し胃に穴を開ける人がいます。幸福とは条件ではありません。幸福とは能力なのです。どんな状況の中からでも喜びを見つけ出し感謝を見つけ出す心の能力、これを鍛え上げることこそが人生の修行であり醍醐味なのです。今あなたがどんなに辛い状況にあろうとも決して絶望しないでください。夜明け前が一番暗いのです。トンネルは必ず抜ける時が来ます。大事なのはそのトンネルの中を歩いている時腐らず諦めず出口の光を信じて一歩一歩進み続けることです。あなたの心の中にある情熱の炎を決して消してはなりません。その炎さえ燃えていればあなたは何度でも立ち上がれる。何度でもやり直せる。人生に遅すぎるということはありません。今この瞬間があなたの残りの人生で一番若い時なのですから、自分を信じなさい。あなたの命の力を信じなさい。あなたは病気になるために生まれてきたのではありません。貧乏になるために生まれてきたのではありません。不幸になるために生まれてきたのではありません。あなたはこの地上で命を喚起させ、何かを創造し、愛し、進化向上するために生まれてきたのです。その本来の目的を思い出しなさい。自分を卑下する声、諦めさせようとする悪魔のささやきに耳を貸してはいけません。あなたはあなたが思っている以上に強く、美しく、そして愛されている存在なのです。さあ、眉間のシワを伸ばし、口角を上げ、肩の力を抜いて、深く、深く深呼吸を一つしてみましょう。宇宙の無限のエネルギーを吸い込み、体の中のよどんだものをすべて吐き出すつもりで、そして鏡に映る自分に向かって、にっこりと微笑みかけ、お前はすごいぞ、お前は強いぞ、お前ならできると声をかけてやってください。それが人生の勝利への第一歩です。自分の最大の味方は自分自身でなければなりません。人生の結果など棺桶に入るまでわかりません。いや、魂のレベルで見れば死んでからが本当の評価かもしれません。しかし私が確信しているのは、この世で心を磨き清らかで強く朗らかな状態を保ち続けた人間はどのような結末を迎えようとも必ずいい人生だったと心から満足して旅立つことができるということです。それが勝つということの真の意味です。他人に勝つ必要などありません。昨日の自分に勝ち、今日の弱気に勝ち、明日の不安に勝つ。そうして自分自身を乗り越え続けた先に、誰も見たことのない素晴らしい景色が広がっているのです。その景色を見る権利があなたにはあるのです。今日という日が残りの人生の最初の一日です。過去がどうであったかなど一切関係ありません。今この瞬間からあなたは変われる。あなたの心が変われば言葉が変わり、行動が変わり、習慣が変わり、人格が変わり、そして運命が変わる。運命は変えられる。宿命は変えられなくとも運命はあなたの手の中にあるのです。さあ、顔を上げなさい。胸を張りなさい。そして颯爽と歩き出しなさい。あなたの人生の主役はあなた自身なのです。力強く、勇ましく、そして何より朗らかに、あなたの人生という物語を最高傑作に仕上げてください。私はいつでも宇宙の彼方から、あるいはあなたの心の奥底から、あなたを全力で応援しています。大丈夫。必ず良くなる。必ずできる。なぜなら、あなたは宇宙の霊気を受け継ぐ尊い存在なのだから。勝利はすでにあなたの手の中に約束されているのです。さあ、いってらっしゃい。そして人生を思い切り楽しみなさい。 この世界はあなたの魂が踊るための舞台なのだから、健闘を祈ります。ごきげんよう。
We are visiting with someone recently. It comes up from time to time, often with a counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist who is working with someone who wants to feel better but does not. And we were describing the range of emotions that can go all the way from absolute depression, feeling of being lost or buried, all the way to ecstasy. In other words, it's a broad range of emotion and feeling. And we were saying that when a person is in a very strong negative emotion, like a feeling of depression or grief or abandonment, one of those very heavy, consuming, suffocating feelings, that the path of least resistance for them, which is the same thing as saying the path of most allowance, it is not logical for them to go from depression to joy. They can't make the jump. No one can. Any more than you can set your radio tuner on one station and receive what's being broadcast on another. So we said sometimes a very practical, logical, effective, deliberate reaching for an emotion might be anger. In other words, think about it. Doesn't anger feel better to you than grief or depression? It does, doesn't it? Certainly not the best choice in the world, but it's a better choice than grief or depression. And it's a closer match to where you are, and so it is a more likely choice. So the psychologist often will say, oh, well, you are just shifting your grief to anger. And anger is not a healthy vibration either. And we say, healthier than grief. Felt better. Almost anybody would agree with that. And so rather than say, oh, you need to make the jump all the way, why not applaud the fact personally that you feel a little better in your anger? In fact, we might even help you to create a list of others that you're angry at for a while, just so that you can maintain that angry improvement over that deep depression. Now, we want to put a disclaimer here. We do not want you to plan on staying in that angry place forever. But it is a bridge from your depression. And once you're angry, then reach for a bridge from the anger into something else. But sometimes what happens is, from your very strong negative emotion, as you're starting to make your way out of it, then someone observes your, what is to you, new improved state of being, but your new improved state of being is still on their list of things that people should never do. And then they counsel you or correct you that your anger is not productive. And we would say to you to say to them, tell them to mind their own business, because no one can know what improved path of least resistance you are upon. So as you make this your personal trek, as you say, nothing is more important than that I feel good, and I am on my way to feeling better and better and better. And no one said I must jump from depression to joy. In fact, no one has ever done that. You cannot do it. In other words, you have to bridge your way into a better feeling place. And of course, there are all kinds of things that may be potentially active in your vibration. And the more you have practiced a myriad of good feeling thoughts that are also active in your vibration, then the more possibility you have of moving to the better feeling thought. Now let's talk about the subject of depression or grief for just a moment. And let's think about, so something has happened in your experience. Maybe it happened to someone you know. Maybe it really is not directly related to you, other than that it happened to someone that you know. But as you focus upon this thing that happened to someone you know, this dramatic event gets quite a bit of your attention in your now. More than usual, more than anything usually gets. And so you have focused for a few hours or days or weeks upon this subject until you've really activated a vibration that is counter to your own desire. It does not serve you. And you you are feeling the emotional response to it. Now, why do you feel negative emotion? What does negative emotion mean anyway? Negative emotion means that in this moment you are choosing a vibration that is keeping you from connecting with the energy that is really you. In your physical bodies, you are extensions of source energy. And when you are in extensions of source energy and you are holding a thought that is in vibrational harmony with that energy that is your source, you feel wonderful. That's what elation, that's what clarity, that's what that feeling of passion and eagerness and love and joy and appreciation is. In other words, when you feel like that, that's what we call tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You are in vibrational sync with who you really are. In fact, you are in that moment, you are then really who you are. But in your time of negative emotion, what that means is something has your attention and it's had it for a while, and you've been beating the drum of something long enough that you have a pretty active vibration going on that is different from the vibration of your source. In fact, it has become more dominant than the vibration of your source. And while you are beating this drum, no matter how justified your society would claim that you are holding yourself in resistance to the source energy, which means your physical body is diminishing, you are not experiencing as much well-being, and not only are you blocking the resources of your physical human body so that your well-being is being hindered, you are blocking all resources of all well-being that you have been summoning. And so the more you've been summoning, the more you have been setting goals, the more you've been saying, I like this, I want that, I prefer this, I'm going to do something about this, the more attention that you've been giving to those things that you desire, and the more energy has been summoned by you on your behalf, and the more source energy that is flowing to you in creative response to those desires that you've set forth, then the more that contradictory energy is going to be felt by you. In other words, you go 100 miles an hour and you hit a tree, it is impressive. So, as you begin to become aware that the emotion that you feel is your indicator of your mix of emotions, and you say, nothing is more important than my awareness of my mix of emotions, because nothing is affecting me. There are no outside circumstances that have any power over me. There is no assertion, there's no law of assertion, there's no somebody else can make something happen in my life experience. Everything is being asked for by you, and everything is being allowed by you, and there is nothing else and no one else in the mix. It's only you and 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 you. In other words, it's only about you. It's only about the vibrational thoughts, the vibrational drums that you're beating. So something happens in your experience. It happened to someone you know. You gave your attention to it because in society that's the way you're supposed to behave, and you began beating the drum of it until you activated within you something that is counter to the source energy that is really you. And you feel strong negative emotion. And for the sake of this example, let's say it's really strong. You can hardly catch your breath about it. In other words, you are about as low as you can ever remember being. And then someone says to you, get happy. And you say, drop dead. Someone says to you, this negative emotion is not serving you. And you say, tell me something I do not already know. I don't want to feel like this. I just feel like this. I didn't mean to beat this drum. I just beat this drum because it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. And now I've got myself into this vibrational place, and I will bring myself out of it. I will bring myself out of it little by little. Now here's the thing we want you to hear. If you have been, and most everyone is to some degree in this category, if you have been beating drums of things that you prefer about different subjects, then you have the potential of activating a lot of really good feeling vibrations. You just don't have access to them right now. And in nearly every condition, as time passes, this new beating of this drum that is causing the discouragement will wane, and other more life-giving vibrations that you have been practicing from time to time will surface. In other words, it is natural for you to regain your balance, even without a lot of conscious, focused willpower. But this is the science of deliberate creation. You all have come saying, I want to be the creator of my experience. I want to set the tone of my vibration. I want to set the pitch of my vibrational point of attraction. I want to be the deliberate creative allower of what comes to me. I am willing if it comes to that, to let enough time pass that eventually I stop beating that drum so much as I'm distracted with the other things of life. And I know that eventually I will come out of the depression, as nearly everyone does. But I want to have my hands in the clay. I want to be the deliberate creator of my experience. I want to practice vibrations. I want to practice the beating of drums so that no matter what happens, I'm stable. Because otherwise, you are buffeted about by a small cork on a raging sea as conditions and circumstances happen in your world or in your neighborhood or in your household, in your experiences, as things are happening that get your attention, and in getting your attention it causes you to beat a drum, then you take a roller coaster sort of ride if you haven't decided that you can control the way you feel. And so when you begin to say, I can control the way I feel because I can control what I focus upon, and you say, and I'm going to start from wherever I am. I'm not going to wait until I'm joyful, and I'm not going to wait until something happens that makes me need to do it. I'm going to start right now today being the deliberate creator of my experience, which means I'm going to deliberately start thinking thoughts because I'm wanting to deliberately start noticing the correlation between the thought I'm thinking and the way I'm feeling. I'm going to beat the drums that feel the best. And that falls into the category or game that we like to call making the best of it. Making the best of it. Now, you know a little bit about, in fact, many of you know a lot about beating the drum of something and how it will increase. In other words, have you ever known anyone who just deliberately makes the worst of everything? They just emphasize the worst possible scenario and play it out, a sort of negative what-if game, so that they can get as much mileage as possible out of not feeling good in this moment. And what we are encouraging is the opposite of that. We're encouraging that you make the best of everything, because no matter where you stand, if you do your best to feel a little better, then you'll stand in a new place, and if you make your best to feel a little better, then you'll stand in a new place. And if you do your best to feel a little better, before you know it, and in a much shorter time than any of you really realize, you'll be right back out into that beautiful, bright, light place where you are aligned with the energy that is really you, where only well-being can be your experience. And then you will have the experience of moving through life, even though there are things that are happening around you that will not be affecting you. Now, for some of you, that feels uncomfortable. It feels a little uncomfortable, as Esther talked to a friend in New York who was sitting there in her second day with no electricity. She was very happy that she had one old-fashioned phone that was working. And she said, "Where are you?" And Esther said, "Oh, let's not talk about that." Her friend said, "Well, where are you?" "Well, I'm embarrassed to tell you where I am. I'm in Malibu." "Well, what are you doing?" "Well, I'm watching dolphins jumping, kayakers kayaking, and surfboarders surfing, and I'm actually in an utter state of joy. I'm so sorry." It's cool here. We have our windows open. We ate papaya with lime on it. I'm thriving. I'm sorry. Because when people that you adore are having experiences that are less than thriving, you're not the best bridge for them, are you? Law of attraction would not normally bring you together. In other words, law of attraction would not put someone in ecstasy together with someone who is struggling. But in your physical environment, you often deliberately walk into situations rather than feeling your way, rather than vibing your way, rather than allowing your way. And so this gathering, as we talk about the art of allowing, what it's really about is you deciding that you want to feel good, and then practice feeling good, and then allow universal forces to create the unfolding of your life experience. It turns out that your work is feeling good. Your work isn't about making it happen. Universal forces make it happen. Your work is about feeling good. And we have to say to you that in the vernacular that you mean as work, it does take work, meaning it takes effort, meaning it takes concentration, meaning it takes attention to a subject, meaning it takes deliberately doing something. It takes work to feel good, but the payoff for beating the drum that makes you feel better is huge. Those old stale desires don't feel so good, do they? And when you think about it, there's never a reason for a desire to hang around in unfulfilled form so long that it gets stale. Because when you ask, it's always given. So if you have stale desires, what's up with that? We understand how when some smart aleck, dead entity like Abraham would say, are you appreciating the contrast of your time and place? And don't you just love those desires that are being born out of it? We can understand how sometimes you would not want to give us a resounding yes. When you ask, it is always given. Step 1, ask. It always being given is a step 2 part. In other words, that's not your work. When you ask, it is always given. But sometimes, without meaning to, you may not be in vibrational alignment with what you're asking for. And it's easy to understand why that might happen, because you are physically focused. There's lots for you to observe. And as you look into your environment and you see those things, you cannot help but notice them as they are. And as you notice them as they are, you achieve further vibrational alignment with them. And as you achieve further vibrational alignment with them, you continue to offer more vibration about them. And as you offer more vibration about them, you continue to get more of it. In other words, we understand how, without meaning to, you might be achieving vibrational alignment with what is, even though what is not exactly what you want. Think about it. So, if you're giving all of your attention to what is, and some of what is pleases you, then you're getting more of that. But some of what is doesn't please you, then you're getting more of that. And then you say, Abraham, why do you keep harassing us by telling us that when we ask it is always given? Because that can't be true. Where's my stuff? There are all kinds of things that I'm asking for that is not apparently being given because I'm not finding it in my experience. And we say, it being given and you letting it in are two different things. You have to be in vibrational alignment. That's like saying, I can't hear what's being broadcast from that radio tower on my radio. It must not be being broadcast. So you tell all your friends, they're not broadcasting from that tower anymore because I can't hear a thing. And your friend might say, well, do you have your radio on? Do you have your tuner set to the same frequency? Because if you are not set to the same frequency of the broadcast tower, you're not going to be receiving what's being broadcast. And the same thing is true of anything that you are asking for. If you're saying, I want more money, I don't have enough money. I'm tired of not having enough money. I've never had enough money. I hardly know anybody who has enough money. I want more money, but I don't have enough money. I'm sick and tired of not having enough money. It's so irritating not to have enough money. Not having enough money is scary. I wish I had more money, but I don't have enough money. I want more money. You're not a vibrational match to more money. You're a vibrational match to exactly how it is. And exactly how it is going to continue to unfold in your experience. Sometimes you say, I'm stuck. And we say, that's not possible because everything's in motion. You say, well, I'm stuck. I don't have enough money. We say, you're not stuck. You just keep recreating the same thing over and over. In other words, it's changing. It must change because the vibrational frequencies are constantly being emitted in the powerful now. And what's happening is coming in vibrational response to the broadcast that you are emitting. So it is constantly changing. It's just changing to the same thing over and over and over again. And that's really worth thinking about. In other words, when you put it in that context, doesn't that make sense? It is changing, so if I want it to change to something more pleasing, then somehow I've got to focus upon more pleasing things. And then you commonly say, but it is so hard to focus upon something that is pleasing when I'm surrounded by something that is not pleasing. And we say, but you can do it. You just cannot or may not be able to do it all at once. In other words, we don't expect you to go from beating the drum of something not wanted to suddenly forgetting all of those vibrational habits. We don't expect you to leave behind everything that you've worked so hard to come to believe. Sometimes people will say, I must focus upon that because it is true. And we say, and what makes this fact that it is true make it something that you now think that you must focus upon? And you say, because truths are truths, and we owe it to ourselves to give truths our attention. And we say, but why not be a little more picky about the truths you turn your attention to? When you say, this is a truth that I must focus upon, we say, all that a truth is something that somebody else focused upon. That's what made it a truth. When a whole lot of people focus upon something, it becomes true enough in enough of their experiences that you say, oh, this is reality. But what we want you to realize is that it is only true because somebody focused upon it. And just because somebody else focused upon it, we think it is a little bit illogical for you to say, I see this truth that I do not want, but because someone else focused upon this thing that they did not want and gave enough attention to it that they attracted it into their experience because law of attraction said that they must, now I think that I should do exactly the same thing. No logic in that, is there? So, what we are encouraging you to do is to make a decision that you will pay more attention to the way you feel, because when you pay attention to the way you feel, then you have awareness of what you are doing with your vibration. Your emotions are literally your guidance system to let you know how you are doing on your way to what you've been saying you want. Jerry and Esther have a wonderful navigational system in their vehicle. And the satellites in the sky, combined with the antenna on the roof of their vehicles and the computer that is in the vehicle, always knows where they are. So when they decide they want to go someplace, if it is a place that they do not know, they will program in the name of the city, the name of the street if they know it, even the street number. And Magellan will say to them, please proceed to the highlighted route. And then Magellan will guide them turn by turn to where they say they want to go. Magellan never says to them, where have you been? Because that has nothing to do with the only task at hand. The only task at hand is getting from where you are to where you want to be. And Magellan is so clear about what you said. It's a woman's voice. The man's voice was far too bossy. So Jerry and Esther affectionately call her, she. Jerry sometimes will say, shut that broad up. Because she is relentless. She never forgets what you told her you wanted. She never forgets where you said you want to go. So if you take a side trip, if you stop at Taco Bell or stop for fuel, Magellan will say, please proceed to the highlighted route. 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 She does not become more agitated. She does not get louder, but she insistently continues to say, please proceed to the highlighted route. And eventually, if you continue to ignore her and you go very far from the route, she will say, when possible, make a legal U-turn. You have a similar guidance within you. It comes to you in the form of your emotions. And when you pay attention to the way you can feel when you are upon your highlighted route. You can feel when you are in alignment with that which you are saying you're wanting. And you can also feel when you are not. It is exactly the same sort of guidance. So as you are paying attention to the way you feel, you are then able to, by reaching for thoughts that continue to make you feel better, you are able to keep yourself in vibrational alignment with that which you are saying you're wanting. The best words that we've ever heard offered in your physical environment were coined by Joseph Campbell when he said, follow your bliss. That's the key to success in all things. Absolutely true. But you don't have access to the feeling of bliss from your feeling of despair. The vibrational difference is too great, any more than you could set your tuner to 98.6 FM and hear what's being broadcast on 6:30 AM. In other words, there are different vibrational frequencies you're not going to hear. So, when you say, well, if I cannot follow my bliss, what hope is there for me? We say, well, follow the trail of bliss. And the first step from depression along the trail of bliss may very well be for you anger. You say, well, that's doable. And isn't it? Can't you feel it? Have you ever been in a place of depression where you couldn't get a breath of air? And then you thought of something that made you angry, and didn't it feel better? You gotta admit that anger feels a whole lot better than that depression, just like blame feels better than guilt. It does, doesn't it? Blame feels a lot better than guilt. There is so much more disempowerment in guilt. There is so much more loss of the feeling of freedom in guilt. So, if you were, as most of you are, as you come to these gatherings, usually vibrating somewhere between frustration and overwhelmment and joy. In other words, that's usually where your emotional set point is, different depending on the issue that you're focused upon, but usually in the upper registries. We would not counsel you into anger from your feeling of frustration. That's going the wrong way. But if you are in despair, we will root for the breath of fresh air that anger would bring you. And the reason that we would coach you into anger is because we know that in that anger, you're going to feel some relief, and in that relief, you're going to have moved your point of attraction. It will have shifted a little bit. In other words, you're not as stuck in disallowing the well-being that you've been asking for as you were in your despair. Now, we would never say, just go to anger and stay there, because from anger, you can easily get to frustration, and frustration is a big difference in feeling from anger. So, are you getting the sense of this? What you're reaching for as you're moving up the emotional scale, what you're reaching for is the feeling of relief as you leave the resistance behind. So there is relief in anger. You know there is. And there is relief in frustration. You know there is. And there is relief in hopefulness. And then there's relief in belief. And there's absolute relief in knowing. In other words, you can feel when you release resistance, which is the only thing that is keeping any of you from what you are really wanting. You are pure, positive energy beings. You are God force in physical form. You are extensions of source energy, and life is supposed to be good for you. You are creators that flow the energy that creates worlds, and you are standing on the leading edge of thought. It is supposed to feel good for you. Life is supposed to be good to you. And when it isn't, it is only for one reason. You have picked up a habit of thought, and you've practiced the beating of that drum long enough that you have established it as a vibrational habit. And as you continue to feel that vibrational habit, unless you do something to change the way you feel, law of attraction is going to continue to bring you stuff that feels like that. And as law of attraction continues to bring you stuff that feels like that, and you observe the stuff that feels like that, and you justify the way you feel by the stuff that keeps coming, then we understand why you feel stuck. But we promise you, you're not. You just got a cadence going that you need to shift a little. We've noticed that sometimes very powerful, very good teachers who are counselors might not understand the power that you give yourself when you find something that feels a little better to you. Most people worry when you go from depression to anger. Most people who know you would rather you're depressed than angry. Because when you're depressed, you go away and you leave them alone. And when you're angry, you're in their face. You're hard to be with. But you must reach the place, if you are going to listen to the guidance system that is within you, and it is what the art of allowing really is about. The art of finding thoughts that cause me to allow my connection with Source, that allow the well-being that I've identified to flow to me. So, when someone says to you, you should not be angry, just say to them, maybe not, but I am, and I'm glad I am. You should feel how bad I felt before I got mad. This anger is a big improvement for me. And if you don't like it, go someplace else. I won't be here forever. But right now, it's what I'm choosing, and it feels good to me. Now, here's the power in this, and this is what we really want you to hear. Now, we're really not big encouragers of running around and telling people you're angry, because they will disagree with the appropriateness of it, and they will try to talk you out of it, and then you will just end up angrier, more depressed. In other words, we see so many. You're depressed, maybe. Some of you have never felt that. Most of you have at some point or other. When you really, really, really want something and you really, really, really can't figure out how to get to it, it really, really, really feels awful. And the more important something is to you, then the more awful it feels when you feel powerless to do something about it.